Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, and welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal podcast.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down. Better dig deep and put 'em in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. Ooh, they're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
You know, this past weekend, it was pretty cool if you're a Army guy. It was, of course, the 250th anniversary of the United States Army, our birthday. We were founded June 14th of 1775. Before there was a nation, there was an army. And as well, in October 1775 came the Navy. November 1775 came the Marine Corps. But the Army was the very first ones. And we have our motto, "This will defend." And how interesting it is that June 14, 1775, the Army is created. June 14, 1777, the American flag is basically created by order of the Continental Congress. So the Army birthday is also Flag Day. So 250 years of our United States Army, 248 years of celebrating the American flag. And for Americans, to get a history lesson in 3 hours about what has transpired, what the Army has done over the past 250 years, to see the faces of those young men and young women who raised their right hand to say that they will support and defend the Constitution. They take an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that they take that obligation freely without any purpose of evasion or mental reservation. You saw that reenlistment ceremony, those soldiers standing there. That's the next generation of young men and young women who will stand on freedom's ramparts. See, I can guarantee you that there were people, and probably still people in the United States of America, they had no clue about Army birthday. What is that? Flag Day? What is that? June 14th? You know, we have taken this month of June, and instead of remembering the sacrifices of soldiers like on June the 6th of 1944 at D-Day, Operation Overlord, most people, you say, well, what's D-Day? What does that stand for? What does that mean? Omaha Beach, huh? Utah Beach, what? See, when you saw all of those soldiers marching in period uniforms with period weaponry, to talk about the history of the United States of America, I guarantee you, you go out and ask people, who fought in the War of 1812? There was a war in 1812. I don't know. French, British, Russians, they wouldn't know. Star Spangled Banner was because of soldiers in Fort McHenry raising the American flag as the British fleet was bombarding Fort McHenry located right there in Baltimore Harbor. Francis Scott Key was on one of those British vessels. He was there to negotiate prisoner release. He watched the bombardment, and those incredible words that have become our national anthem came from what happened because of what soldiers were doing to keep the American flag flying through that bombardment. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? Well, so proudly we hail the twilight's last gleaming. There were people this past Saturday had no clue. And what was so beautiful, because, you know, in our house, we had an Army birthday cake. My son-in-law, my oldest son-in-law, and myself sang the Army song. My youngest son-in-law, who is a second lieutenant in the United States Army Reserves, commissioned as a chaplain. He is now off on a 2-week deployment. So my oldest son-in-law and I sang the Army song. He had spent 12 years in the Army Reserves himself. And my oldest grandson, since his dad was deployed away, I let him blow out the candles on the Army birthday cake in our home. That's what this past Saturday was all about. Yeah, I know. It was the president's birthday. It was the vice president's anniversary. That's not what this past Saturday was all about. It was about men and women, like my dad, who over 250 years, like my father in law, has stood to make sure that this constitutional republic is protected, that it is free, that your liberties and your rights and your freedoms are protected, and even more so to try to seek to extend that blessing to people who have been trapped, who have been subjugated by tyrannical regimes. And so, how interesting it is, speaking of tyrannical regimes, that on the same day that we are to celebrate the 250th anniversary, the birthday of our United States Army and our Flag Day, that you got a bunch of chuckleheads wanting to go out and protest on that day, talking about some dadgum no kings. What the heck does no kings mean? I mean, the Army was established on June the 14th of 1775 to break the tyranny of a king, King George III. And I'm sure a lot of people probably don't know that, especially the brainless, mindless lemmings and useful idiots that were out there protesting, storming an ICE facility, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement facility in Portland, Oregon, attacking federal law enforcement officers, injuring them, throwing fireworks and things of this nature, busting out windows. They had no clue. I mean, this whole no kings thing, where were they when Joe Biden was violating the Constitution? Well, Mr. Autopen. I mean, that's what kings do. Remember the Ten Commandments, Pharaoh Ramses, so let it be written, so let it be done. Where were these judges when the Autopen administration were doing all of these things against the Constitution? The Supreme Court says that you cannot relieve college student loan debt. They did it anyhow. Where was the no kings people then? Or how about Hillary Clinton? Yeah, I just bleached all myself. I just destroyed all these government computers. I came up with this fake dossier to go after my political opponent. Where are these people? See, what I recognize about the progressive socialist leftists, these Marxists, whatever they are doing, they try to project it against someone else, completely oblivious, or want you to be completely oblivious to the fact that they're the ones doing it. So, yeah, telling me what type of food I can eat, car I can drive, whether I can go outside my house or not, that's what kings do. But see, it's okay for them because, again, their whole mantra is to have this totalitarian domination and control, centralized control of your life. So next time you run into one of these, useful idiots talking about no kings, just give them the facts. So you think it's okay to tell me how much toilet water I can flush? What kind of shower head I can have? You got to be insane. See, once you get them past their initial talking point, that's when they yell and scream. Because they really, I've never seen people that are just rooted in such hypocrisy. And when you present it to them, they go into an apoplectic meltdown. MSNBC out there promulgating all these lies. That's why you have these people going out here and saying really dumb stuff. So, yeah, you want to talk about no kings? Then look at yourselves. Because we're not going to live our lives that way. And it also reminds me of the words that Benjamin Franklin shared with a Philadelphia socialite, a woman by the name of Mrs. Powell, on September the 17th of 1787. Now, most people that know a little bit about American history know that date because that's the date that our Constitution was signed, our rule of law, the thing that embodies us as the American people. America is not a democracy. America is a republic. It says so in Article 4, Section 4 of that Constitution. But anyhow, Mrs. Powell asked Benjamin Franklin a very pertinent question. She said, "Well, doctor, what is it that we have, a monarchy or a republic?" He replied, "A republic if you can keep it." So who are these no kings people? We have kings. Our very first general, George Washington, he could have ascended to leadership as a military leader. Nope. You know what George Washington did? He resigned his commission, went back home to Mount Vernon. He didn't want to be a king. Even when he was talked into coming back into service for his country as the first president, did 2 terms, then he left. Didn't want to be a king. So what are these people talking about? No kings. And really, when you peel the onion back and use facts against them, you reveal who they are truly in nature. Because I would think that anyone that is telling me how much toilet water I can flush, what type of shower head I can have, what type of stove I can use to cook my food, what type of dishwasher I can have, what type of light bulbs I can have, what type of car I can drive. Anyone that tells me that my children are not my own, I think that's kind of tyrannical. That's what a king does. And if you go back and read the Declaration of Independence, you can understand that Thomas Jefferson studied and read the writings of John Locke, the true classical liberal John Locke, his 2 treatises of government, 1689. When John Locke, the English political philosopher, created this new philosophy, this new system of governance, this new theory called natural rights theory as opposed to divine rights theory, he completely rejected this whole thing about the divine right of kings and queens and dukes and duchesses and princesses to rule and lord over us, little L for Lord. Natural rights theory said that individuals, mankind, usin, we naturally receive our rights of life, liberty, and property from the Creator God. That's codified in the Declaration of Independence. So what are these no kings people talking about? What are they out there marching around protesting? What are they out there burning the American flag about? Because they're the ones that want to lord over you. They're the ones that want to be the kings over you with a little k. They're the ones that want to have totalitarian domination over you. They want to be able to tell you every aspect of your life. They want to be able to say who gets to live. I mean, they want to dismember babies in the womb. They want to tell our children and force them into having their bodies mutilated because of their sick value system. And like a kid throwing a temper tantrum, since they can't get their way, they just take to the streets and they try to coerce you, intimidate you, threaten you, and even implement violence so that they can get their way. Because nobody really wants to succumb to tyranny on their own will and own accord, unless you're a mindless lemming and a useful idiot. You know, we woke up Saturday and we heard the news about lawmakers in Minnesota, Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota, former Speaker of the House there and a state senator who were shot. The former Speaker of the House and her husband, they were killed. The state senator and his wife, they're going to survive, but they were still victims of a shooting. And there you had it. Oh, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. This is a targeted attack, political violence, blah, blah, blah. The left was just craving. They wanted this. They wanted it to overshadow the Army 250th birthday and Flag Day. But slowly but surely, as the news began to come out, we found out that the person that was guilty of the shootings. Well, I won't say guilt, alleged. That's what people say, but it's him. Was a guy that was appointed by Tim Walz to be on some of his governing boards. This guy had No Kings flyers in the fake police car. He dressed up as a fake police officer. Political assassinations. That's what leftists and Marxists do. And I was sitting there in the house with my wife, Angela, because we're watching this news feed and, we're worried about what's going to overtake the news cycle. Are they even going to talk about the Army birthday? Are they even going to show the parade later on that day? I said, Angela, everyone's saying, what could be the motive behind this? I said, let's just look at what was the most recent controversial vote that these lawmakers took. And we looked it up. Didn't take long. Guess what it was? Those individuals that had been shot, the former Speaker of the House and that state senator from Minnesota, Democrats, they did not vote for free health care for illegal immigrants. As a matter of fact, there was one Democrat lawmaker in Minnesota that basically said that former Speaker of the House had put a gun to her head. She used those exact words. And someone followed up on that. So what is this whole No Kings thing about? It's about restoring leftist, Marxist, ideological domination over this great nation. That's not what the Army has stood up to fight for, but it is what the Army has fought against in the past 250 years of its existence. Monarchical rule, Nazism, which is National Socialism, imperialism, fascism, you name it, communism, Marxism, all of these things that No Kings, Islamic jihadism, all of these things that No Kings stands for, that No Kings embrace. And yeah, they found alliance with Islamic jihadists. Because I found it interesting that out there during these LA riots that they're burning the American flag, but they're walking around waving the Mexican flag and the Hamas flag. That we have had instances going back to even Veterans Day of last year where the American flag was ripped down in New York, but the Hamas flag was raised. Even at Union Station in the nation's capital, not far away from Capitol Hill, the American flag is ripped down. The Islamic jihadist flag of a terrorist organization, Hamas, was raised. That's what this leftist, Marxist, Islamic jihadist crap is all about. Under this mantra, no kings. Donald Trump is not a king. What we saw last Saturday was not about Donald Trump, although the left wants to make it about him because for whatever reason, they are so fixated on him and he has become their public enemy number one. But what has been exposed is their hatred of this country. How could anybody not look at what happened in Washington, D.C. this past Saturday and say, what an incredible celebration of our United States Army. And I'm looking forward to what happens in October for the 250th anniversary birthday of the United States Navy. I'm looking forward to what happens in November for the 250th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. I can't wait. And I was telling a lot of my old Marine buddies, hey, man, I just want to see the show you guys are going to put on. I know it's going to involve some beach landings, amphibious assaults, all this kind of great stuff to show the lethality and the power of that incredible force. Once upon a time, I forget who it was who said this, but they said that America needs an army, but America loves its Marine Corps. It's kind of true. And I even had some memes that some Marines sent to me saying, "Happy birthday, soldiers, from your younger and better looking sibling." God love them. But we joke and jest between each other. But when our nation is threatened, we stand together. So how can anyone disavow? How can anyone dislike? How can anyone say that what happened this past Saturday, 250 years of the United States Army, 248 years of our flag, and show disdain and hatred? Only leftist, Marxist, communist ideologues and Islamic jihadists will do that. And speaking of Islamic jihadists, keep going, Israel. For too long, we have played patty cake with the number one state sponsor of Islamic jihadism, Islamic terrorism. I know some people saying America doesn't have a dog in this fight. Yeah, we do. Because it was October of 1983 when Hezbollah, a proxy, military, army, whatever you want to call it, of Iran, killed 234 Marines, some sailors, and a soldier in Beirut, Lebanon, the Beirut barracks bombing. Iran was behind that. Iran is behind Hamas. Iran is behind the Houthis. It's time that comes to an end. And the ayatollahs and the theocrats and the despots there, the mullahs, whatever, if they get a nuclear capability, they intend to use it. When they say death to Israel, death to America, they mean it. And we should not be allowing anyone in the United States of America to shout death to America, citizen or non-citizen. It's time to make a stand against evil. See, in the history of the United States Army, they've done that because of the will of the people, because of the will of elected leadership, because of the will of the soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guardsman on the ground that knew what had to be done. So when I look at this conflagration, when I look at this back and forth between Israel and Iran, yeah, let's take a side. The side with Israel. I mean, even the Bible says, I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you. But I don't think anyone could disagree with the fact that Iran, in its present state, present leadership, should not be able to have a nuclear weapons capability. And I know everyone's saying, well, the Iranian nuclear agreement would have, helped it. No, the Iranian nuclear agreement of Barack Hussein Obama, an Islamic sympathizer himself. Yeah, you don't believe me? I mean, he's the guy that invited the Muslim Brotherhood to his speech at the University of Cairo. But anyhow, the Iranian nuclear agreement only slowed down their breakout point. It didn't stop them. As a matter of fact, the Iranian nuclear agreement basically had no teeth to it. It didn't allow any type of inspections. And understand that part of the world, this whole compromise, negotiation, sitting around and talking, appeasement, acquiescence, that's weakness. Now they're seeing strength. Same type of strength that Ronald Reagan showed when he took out Iranian oil platforms and took out portions of their navy after one of their mines hit a United States surface warship back in the Persian Gulf. Don't believe me? Go back and check it out. It was the largest naval engagement since World War II. See, that's what they understand. Let's bring Iran to its knees. And when you think about what Israel has done, Israel has decapitated Hamas. Keep going. Israel decapitated and defeated and destroyed Hezbollah. Keep going. Put the Houthis on the list too. But also go for the head of the snake. And we should be supporting that wholeheartedly. And to have members of a political party in the United States of America that would prefer to side with Iran and Islamic jihadism and terrorism? Well, again, that's the unholy alliance that we see between the left, Islamic jihadism, between the Democrat Party and people like Hamas. They're finding simpatico. That's not how we continue to protect, preserve, defend, and advance this constitutional republic and all the people that are lovers of liberty and freedom across the world. So Israel is doing the world a favor. There should be no condemnation. And who cares? The UN Security Council, where China and Russia sit there, they have a lot to lose if Iran goes down. And I think that it is time for that to happen, to enable the Iranian resistance to do what is necessary to overthrow the tyranny of the Ayatollahs, which I remember back in 78, 79, when I was transitioning from high school into college, when the Ayatollah Khomeini came to power, and we saw the new resurgence of Islamic terrorism and jihadism. So keep going, Israel, because those of us in America that understand this enemy and understand this fight, we're with you. And to those who want to side with Islamic terrorism and jihadism, you're totally on the wrong side, and history will show it. This whole leftist no kings movement, AstroTurf, and what's even better politically, the left is creating their own political commercial advertisements, which will play against them next year as we go into the midterm election cycle. For 250 years, men and women have worn the uniform of the United States Army and said, "This will defend." The question is today, will you be one of those American citizens who show themselves to be steadfast and loyal and enable us to continue to defend the longest running constitutional republic that the world has ever known, the beacon of liberty and freedom, to which people come to our shores? We refer it legally, not illegally. Now is your moment to choose which side of that line you will stand. God bless you. And choose the side of being steadfast and loyal.
Before they burn it down.